Welcome back to the deep dive. This time, we're going to dive headfirst into a collection of articles from the March 2005 issue of the Dealey Plaza Echo. You might not be familiar with it. It's a journal published by a group of JFK assassination researchers over in the UK. And trust me, these aren't your typical JFK history recaps.
Oh, absolutely not. These articles are laser focused
Yeah.
on very, very specific aspects of the assassination and the people involved. They offer this really unique lens through which we can re-examine the evidence, the individuals, and all the sort of lingering questions surrounding this event.
Yeah, exactly. We've got pieces here analyzing everything from Secret Service agent Clint Hill's run to the presidential limousine to a breakdown of the random items found in Jack Ruby's car and even a specially signed copy of the Warren Report. Talk about intriguing. It really makes you wonder what else might be hidden beneath the surface of this, well-documented yet still mysterious event.
That's what makes these articles so compelling. They force us to sort of re-examine what we think we know about the assassination and to consider the possibility that even the smallest details could challenge the official narrative.
Okay, so let's start with one of those seemingly small details. That could potentially unravel a much larger story. We're talking about those 2.3 seconds immediately following the shots on Elm Street.
Okay, yeah. Specifically, the actions of Secret Service agent Clint Hill, who made that desperate dash towards the limousine. As the shots rang out, this is the focus of the first article, 2.3 Seconds on Elm Street, by Alaric Rosman.
Now, everyone has seen that footage of Hill running towards the car. But what makes this article so fascinating is that Rosman breaks down Hill's movements frame by frame, almost like a scientist analyzing an experiment.
Right, he uses this technique called kinematic analysis, which essentially means studying motion and its causes. By examining the speed and position of the presidential limousine and the Zapruder film, Rosman calculates the speed and distance Hill would have had to cover in those crucial seconds. And his findings are pretty startling.
He concludes that, based on his calculations, the timeline presented by the Warren Commission for Hill's run is physically impossible.
That's right.
For example, Rosman points out that Hill had to jump from a moving Secret Service follow-up car onto the back of the limousine. He compares this jump to a bus inspector leaping from a slow-moving Routemaster bus in London. Not exactly a feat you can pull off easily, especially given the speed of the motorcade.
Especially that speed, right?
And here's where things get even more complex. Remember Dr. Luis Alvarez. He's that physicist who famously used his expertise to analyze the Zapruder film. Well, Alvarez came to a different conclusion, stating that the presidential limousine actually decelerated before the fatal headshot. So right off the bat, we have conflicting accounts about the speed of the car, which of course directly affects the plausibility of Hill's run.
Exactly. It really underscores a theme we'll see throughout these articles, that even in a heavily documented event like the JFK assassination, discrepancies and inconsistencies abound. It raises questions about the reliability of eyewitness accounts and even the accuracy of official investigations.
And remember, Rosman's analysis is just part one of a three-part series. Talk about a cliffhanger. But before we get too caught up in Hill's run, let's shift gears and delve into another fascinating aspect of the assassination. The enigma that was Jack Ruby.
Yeah, Jack Ruby. Our next article is titled, What Have You Got There, Jack? By Ian Griggs. And it takes us on this deep dive into the rather peculiar contents of Ruby's pockets and car at the time of his arrest for killing Lee Harvey Oswald.
Now, the Warren Report itself stated that Ruby basically used his pockets and car trunk as his bank. And as you'll see, that description is shockingly accurate.
Yeah, it really is. Griggs really unpacks this idea of Ruby as this disorganized yet high-rolling figure.
The list of items found is just wild. We're talking over $2,000 in cash, including 9 $100 bills, a small fortune back then.
Right, and then there's the sheer randomness of the rest of it. Jewelry, business cards, receipts, even a telegram sent just minutes before he shot Oswald.
And we haven't even gotten to the car trunk yet. It was like a bizarre time capsule. A dog muzzle, ladies' gloves, a bathing cap, golf shoes, and even a twist-waist exerciser, for that classic 1960s workout.
Oh, yeah, of course. What I find particularly interesting is Griggs' observation that Ruby, despite carrying all that cash, didn't seem to even own a wallet. It paints this picture of someone who was impulsive and perhaps even a little reckless.
And despite these exhaustive searches of Ruby's belongings and his car, there wasn't a single shred of evidence connecting him directly to Oswald. It deepens the mystery surrounding Ruby's motives and adds another layer of complexity to this already convoluted case.
It certainly does. So we've got this chaotic scene in the moments after the assassination. A Secret Service agent potentially defying the laws of physics, and a nightclub owner with a penchant for carrying around strange assortments of items. What's standing out to you so far?
I think for me, it's the immediate emergence of conflicting information. On one hand, you have Rosman's meticulous analysis, calling into question the Warren Commission's timeline. And then you have Alvarez adding another wrinkle with his deceleration theory. It makes you wonder how such a heavily scrutinized event can still have so many gaps and inconsistencies.
Exactly. And then you have Ruby, this paradoxical figure, flush with cash but disorganized, thrust into the spotlight with this pivotal act, yet seemingly without any direct connection to Oswald. It feels like every time we try to grasp the situation, another layer of complexity reveals itself.
Well, hold on tight, because our journey through these Dealey Plaza Echo articles is just getting started. Up next, we'll be exploring a signed copy of the Warren Report, a mysterious British intelligence officer, and a rosary that might hold more significance than meets the eye.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're picking up our exploration of these intriguing articles from the Dealey Plaza Echo, each one offering these little glimpses into different facets of the JFK assassination.
And this next one adds a layer of international intrigue. We're going to take a closer look at a special copy of the Warren Report.
Not just any copy.
Yeah.
Right. This one was signed and dedicated by none other than Allen Dulles, the former director of the CIA. And here's the kicker: it was given to a British intelligence officer named Alan Crick.
Exactly. The article, a special copy of the Warren Report by Mark Bridger, explores this connection. And it's only part one of Crick's story. The fact that Crick had received signed books from several high-ranking American intelligence figures piqued Bridger's curiosity, leading him to dig deeper into Crick's background.
And what a background it is. Crick's life reads like something straight out of a spy novel. Born in Canada to English parents, he was fluent in German and worked as a vice consul in Danzig before World War II, even helping Jewish refugees escape Nazi persecution.
During the war, Crick was deeply involved in military intelligence, even impersonating a German officer at one point to extract information from a captured major.
He was even present at the German surrender in Flensburg and continued his intelligence work after the war. It was during this time that he crossed paths with figures like Dulles.
The article leaves us wondering about the extent of Crick's CIA connections and whether his intelligence work might have given him any unique insights into the JFK assassination. It begs the question, could there have been international connections or implications that the Warren Commission overlooked?
It's definitely food for thought. But before we get too lost in the world of international espionage, let's shift our focus to a more personal and perhaps even spiritual aspect of the assassination. This next article really tugged at my heartstrings.
Yes, this one brings a human element to our discussion. Paul O'Connor, JFK and a Rosary, by Kim Reinhold, recounts the story of Paul O'Connor, a lab technician who assisted with JFK's autopsy.
O'Connor claimed that a Secret Service agent approached him with a rather unusual request. He asked O'Connor to place a rosary in Kennedy's hands before the casket was closed.
Reinhold, the author, actually owned a rosary identical to the one O'Connor described, adding a personal connection to the story. But there's a twist. The president of Gawler's funeral home, James E. Hagan, claimed that he was the one who placed the rosary in Kennedy's hands. So now we have these conflicting accounts of a seemingly small detail, which makes you question why the discrepancy. Was it simply a matter of misremembering, or was there something more deliberate going on?
Reinhold believes O'Connor's version of events, pointing to his detailed description and strong character. But the question remains, why didn't the Secret Service agent place the rosary himself? Was it too emotionally charged a task in the wake of the assassination? It makes you wonder about the unseen burdens carried by those closest to the tragedy.
Absolutely. It highlights the human toll of the assassination and the ripple effects it had on everyone involved, even those tasked with seemingly procedural duties. Sometimes it's these small personal details that reveal the profound impact of such a momentous event.
Now, speaking of details, our next article takes us back to the physical evidence found at the Texas School Book Depository, specifically those bullet casings.
Right. The shell game. CE 543, The Dented Shell, by Gil Jesus, focuses on the analysis of the 3 spent bullet casings found on the 6th floor of the depository. And one of these casings, CE 543, has a peculiar dent that raises some serious questions about the integrity of the evidence.
This dent on the casing's lip is significant because it would have made it impossible for the casing to hold a bullet prior to being fired. The Warren Commission attempted to explain this away by suggesting the dent occurred during ejection from the rifle.
But Jesus meticulously examines the casing and points out the lack of specific markings that would have been present if it had been fired from Oswald's rifle. He argues that CE-543 was never fired from that rifle, suggesting it was planted at the scene.
And remember that conflict between the Dallas police and the FBI over who would control the evidence. That only adds to the suspicions surrounding the chain of custody.
Exactly. Of the 3 casings, only CE-544 had markings consistent with being fired from Oswald's rifle. So we're left with this unsettling question. If the evidence was potentially compromised, how much can we trust the official narrative based on that evidence?
It's a crucial question that reverberates throughout all these articles.
Thanks.
Before we jump into the final article, I want to pause here for a moment and just let all of this sink in for our listener. We've gone from questioning the physics of a Secret Service agent's run to unpacking the contents of a nightclub owner's car, and now we're grappling with the possibility of tampered evidence. It's a lot to process.
It is. And it demonstrates how even decades later, the JFK assassination continues to generate more questions than answers. But that's part of what makes it so endlessly fascinating.
It's like we're peeling back layers of history, and with each layer, we uncover more complexity and intrigue.
We'll be back in a moment to delve into our final article, one that brings us face to face with the man who apprehended Lee Harvey Oswald. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of these fascinating articles from the Dealey Plaza Echo. And, as we delve into this last piece, it really strikes me how each of these articles, while focusing on a specific detail, ultimately contributes to a much larger conversation about the JFK assassination.
Yeah, you're right. It encourages us to examine those seemingly minor details that might otherwise get lost in the broader narrative. And sometimes those details can lead to some pretty significant questions about the official account of events.
This last article is a perfect example of that. It brings us face to face with the man who arrested Lee Harvey Oswald, Dallas police officer Nick McDonald.
Right. The article titled Gone But Not Forgotten, Nick McDonald, by Larry A. Sneed. It begins by acknowledging McDonald's recent passing, which is a poignant reminder that we're dealing with real people and real lives affected by this event, even decades later.
Sneed recounts his 2001 meeting with McDonald, where he specifically wanted to understand Oswald's demeanor during the arrest at the Texas Theater.
And according to McDonald, Oswald was completely lucid and offered no resistance, which contradicts some accounts that described a struggle during the arrest.
It's a small detail, but one that could potentially challenge the perception of Oswald as a desperate man caught in a web of his own making.
Interesting. What I find particularly interesting is McDonald's firm belief that Oswald acted alone. He expressed frustration with the proliferation of conspiracy theories, stating that he had seen firsthand that Oswald was the lone gunman.
It's a perspective we don't often hear, especially from someone so directly involved in the case. And it makes you wonder, if McDonald had lived to complete the book he was working on, would he have provided even more evidence to support his claim? Or would he have revealed something that challenged his own beliefs?
It's a question we can only speculate on. But what this article, and indeed all the articles we've discussed today, demonstrate is that history is rarely black and white. It's filled with shades of gray, conflicting accounts, and lingering questions.
We started this deep dive with a collection of seemingly disparate articles, and yet we've managed to weave them together into a tapestry of intrigue, raising doubts about the official narrative, exploring the human impact of the assassination, and pondering the weight of evidence.
Yeah, it's like we've been given a glimpse behind the curtain of history, revealing the machinery at work, the inconsistencies, the human frailties, and the enduring mystery of the JFK assassination.
So as we conclude this deep dive, I'm left with a sense of wonder and a renewed desire to keep exploring. What about you?
I think it's safe to say we've both emerged from this deep dive with more questions than answers. But those questions are the spark that ignites further investigation, encouraging us to delve deeper, examine the evidence more critically, and consider perspectives we might not have considered before.
And perhaps by grappling with the complexities of this event, by refusing to accept easy answers, we can gain a deeper understanding not only of the past, but of our own present as well.
Absolutely. So to our listener, we encourage you to continue this exploration. Seek out the Dealey Plaza Echo and delve into the full articles we've discussed today. Read them with a critical eye, question everything, and draw your own conclusions. After all, history is not just a collection of facts, it's an ongoing conversation, a puzzle we're all trying to piece together.
And as we've learned today, sometimes the most intriguing pieces are the ones that don't quite fit, the ones that challenge our assumptions, and force us to re-examine what we think we know.
Exactly.
That's it for this deep dive into the JFK assassination. Until next time, keep exploring. And remember, the truth is out there waiting to be discovered.